Hi, so can you
Hi.
introduce yourself to us?
Yes, my name is Scott Mars, and I'm a painter, and I do other things as well.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us today, Scott.
That's cool. Glad to be here.
All right, well, go ahead and get started on your piece and we'll chit chat while you're working.
That sounds good. Today I'm going to be working on watercolor and cut paper collage. And the goal is to try to utilize the colors and harmonize through an intuitive approach. That means from the heart. And then working slowly and kind of like that. That's part of the process. Watercolor is very watery, runny, but I have learned to love watercolors more than acrylic. So I'm going to begin right now. I'm going to use the Warren color palette to, this is sort of something that I'm going to be working on. And I'm trying to learn watercolor as I go on. Okay, first color I'm going to use is a blue. That's sort of an ultramarine. The more, in this case, I'm going to use more water to continue with the sky. So you just sort of just push the colors back and forth. Sort of work like that. Some colors are rather considered cool colors. That's what sometimes happens. And then you continue to work. It might be that I'll take the cool color approach, which will be the blues, the purples, and the magentas and the pinks. What helps is using a lot of water and cleaning your brush constantly. And as we go on, then you layer your next color, which will be a very light purple. And what I'm trying to do is to imitate mood. And this is rather, seems like a night sky. And as you see, I'm just adding the colors, and that's working well for me. Okay. Let's see. It's about making decisions too, and it's kind of concerning a little bit whether the color is gonna come, whether the colors are gonna come out, whether if you're not sure, just try to just do what your heart tells you. So
Is that how you decide your colors?
that's how I decide my colors. Nothing's really planned, but sometimes I do work with a plan. So as I continue, I'm gonna continue to cut the paper to add some sort of different dimension. If you notice, I have glue on my picture. I prefer that because it gives it more texture. So I glue the piece of paper on. Then I go and use a smaller brush, which will be yellow. Just try to clean the yellow as best as possible to it's good. The fantasy landscape is what I'm trying to work with. Then I'm going to go into turquoise. The goal for watercolor is to keep a wash and use light before you would use dark, because that gives you more of a room to create the actual colors that look really good together. So as you see, I'm going to use a little bit of marker colors to give the idea of different dimensions. And that helps with the intuitive ideas and the intuitive approach. And don't use too much of the marker, because you'll lose the whole scope of the picture. The main goal is to work with your heart and your mind. And so that's a positive approach. So looks like I'm gonna go for another ultramarine in watercolors and create a fantasy landscape.
Have you created a fantasy landscape before?
Not in watercolors, and I find watercolors much more fun.
Mm-hmm. So we're getting to see kind of a new process for you.
It feels like I have much more control,
Mm-hmm.
which is really, really something that I want.
Mm-hmm.
As you see, I'm kind of creating the land, and as you can see, the more transparency the watercolor is, that's pretty much my goal. Then I'm going to use the smaller brush and take in the turquoise. the whole idea is to trust the process of the watercolor by knowing that you don't have much control. It's quite interesting to know how people who paint realistic in watercolor, that's quite amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Continuing on leaving the other colors to make it transparent. Okay. We're pretty close to horizon line, which I decided to work with yellow. And then what use a more deeper as you notice the watercolor of the yellow is becoming evening, and slowly use the orange to shoot the sunset. So here's when I add a tiny bit of piece of watercolor paper. As you notice, my colors are getting dirty, and then I'm going for a clean watercolor approach to see a very washy red. As you notice, I'm putting the brush down. Then I'm going during the white parts put to make unusual color textures, so that quite helps to painting things much more interesting. And so then I'm gonna go for the magenta to begin again, and pretty much try to create its own essence.
So where do you get your ideas for your artwork?
Where do I get my ideas? They're mainly in my head. Before, I would buy a lot of books and try to copy others, and I realized that that wasn't too much fun.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, my sister is a collage artist,
Mm-hmm.
and she works very meticulously. She also does Photoshop, and she also does photography, and that's a whole different approach.
Mm-hmm.
And she's very good.
Yeah. And you have a lot of different approaches as well.
I think so. I try to find what works.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're at an area where okay. Kind of using a sap green. To create some of the bushes and greenery. I find it finding other wet parts of the watercolor is to brush it into the other colors, which gives it much more depth. Sometimes I mix. I find it helpful meditating when I use watercolor. Pause.
Mhm.
Why don't you?
So,
Yeah.
do you listen to music when you make art, Scott?
No.
No.
I prefer an extremely quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It helps you meditate.
absolutely, yes.
So, what artists do you admire or do you get inspiration from?
Since I'm doing a landscape, I love Monet. And Monet, the idea is also used in manga and Japanese illustration art and have now become influences and ceramics as well.
Mm-hmm. Which is another medium that you like to work with.
Absolutely.
What kind of things do you create with your ceramics?
I try to create habitats, homes, and that sort of thing, and just kind of unique pictures and unique ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I like how the watercolor flows.
You have a very unique style that shows texture in both your ceramics and in your paintings.
I think working that way has been able to be very healing to me.
Mm.
As you notice, the colors are rather very different from one another. So the goal is to add these colors into part of the landscape.
Mm.
And let's see, right now I'm going to use some type of yellow and see where that takes me.
So then it's almost like it becomes a reflection, like they're a reflection of each other.
Sort of almost like a map.
Mm. So how do you think that your artwork has changed over time?
Like, for example, I have taken watercolor from acrylic, and I find acrylic much more demanding.
Mhm,
But I do love printmaking as well.
mhm,
And that has also been very fun. And I think it's been helpful to me, beneficial
mhm,
and healthy.
mhm. And you kind of said earlier how you used to look at images and kind of use those to create your pieces, but now you've kind of transitioned into using your own imagination for your pieces.
Yeah, yeah. As you notice, I'm going down.
So when did you start making art?
When did I? Um, about 25 years ago, and it was something I believed, and way before that, just tried to keep my ideas in my head because I didn't have much opportunity
Mm.
to work.
Mhm,
But I'm always grateful for what I have.
mhm. Did you start making art at the art therapy studio or did you start somewhere else?
I think I started from home,
Mhm,
and when I lived with my mother, who was very inspiring, my sister, my family
mhm,
have been instrumental in my art. And as you know, I believe during the COVID-19, we have to do good things for ourselves. And that could be doing art
mhm,
with just without expectations.
mhm.
So I find that kind of a better idea than watching the news and stuff.
Mhm. Do you want to talk about your big piece that you just recently finished that you've been working on for a while? Your weaving.
Yes, I weave, and it took a long time. It started last March, and I just finished it a month ago. And I used a real loom, a tapestry loom. And then working like that I find what it does, it releases anxiousness, anxiety, and that sort of helps in a way.
Mhm,
There's times in art where you're painting and you kind of don't know where to take the piece. Just work slowly at a pace.
mm.
And okay, try a regular blue, kind of. Okay.
So what do you think drives you to create art?
What helps is knowing the reason why you may create art,
Mm-hmm.
and not put too much expectations, because it's mainly a really good healing factor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna make a tree. Always change your water. That's always cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna use burnt umber. More of a dark red.
So you feel like you create art for healing.
Yeah. So, but it also has other benefits which I'm quite happy about.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to go for grants, trying to get my work out there, which is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as an artist.
Hmm?
As an artist.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. I like to go to shows and see different things go on, and see how others may work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then I'm gonna go back into the sky, which has to be worked with a much smaller, thinner brush, which I think I have right here. Kind of mix that in the red and kind of just make little zigzags. As you see, I'm not trying to make an image. I'm just trying to work where I could, just use it as a scale of form of healing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a technical artist. I mainly do it through my inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite piece that you've made?
Do I have a favorite piece that I did? I have a couple that I did, couple portraits that I did of Einstein, but those are starting to take me onto another journey from the fork in the road to actually have other ideas, favorite ideas.
And those Einstein pieces, what medium did you use for those?
I used acrylic. Then I'm gonna go back and use the fan brush and continue with the tree. And kind of work it like this.
You get a very interesting texture using the fan brush.
That's what I'm aiming for. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Getting the bristles and the bushes, and so as I go on, it's mainly a fantasy scene.
Mm.
And if it reminds you of a tropical, I wonder,
Mhm.
what do you think?
Yeah, I do feel the tropical, almost like a tropical sunset in there.
That's what I'm going for.
Yeah.
I learned how much I love the work of Gauguin,
Mm.
and when he went to Tahiti, and his ceramics are quite interesting.
Mm.
And he was good friends with Van Gogh.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So as I move on, I'm going to try to keep some white areas so it could show some depth.
Mhm.
Kind of take this toward the branch. Another branch that goes
So, what role do you think does the artist have in society?
what artists have in society is, I believe, it's everyone's own blueprint. It's what the artist expresses.
Mhm.
What I believe is people should understand that the artist has the journey,
Mhm.
and art is subjective.
Mhm.
And people should be a little kinder, because it's okay not to understand what other people are doing.
Mm.
It's their journey.
Mhm. So you feel like the artist role is to kind of maybe facilitate that expression of, their journey and being kind to others?
I believe so. I believe so. It's a platform
Mm-hmm.
to express what you're feeling, anxiety, anger, and thinking about trying to find other avenues for coping
Mm-hmm.
when things get rough.
Yeah.
Okay. There's also technical aspects. How many more images do I want to put to the watercolor? It's quite difficult to think. But making that decision is kind of difficult.
Mhm.
So you kind of look at it. And just think about it. Artists also express their voice through painting or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of close to being finished.
Mhm.
I'm gonna add some type of interesting leaves that I find. The goal here is not to make it, it's to make it less realistic. I want to thank you for joining me today. And I decided only to leave one element because it'll even out as it goes on. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us today, Scott.
Thank you.